Without further ado, I would like to introduce our first speaker, Kari Hammerschlag, and she's here representing the Environmental Working Group, one of my favorite organizations to go to online when you're wondering if a product is safe or not, and how do you know, and has it been tested, and what were the results. And it's a great website if you haven't been to it. It's got a database for everything, right? And Kari is the Senior Agriculture Analyst and wants to talk to us about a very broad issue for us, maybe not as broad as life on Earth, but as Americans, issues that we have to take into consideration, and that's the Farm Bill. So
thank you, Jeannie, so much. Where did she go? There she is. Thanks so much for inviting me to be here to talk about this really important issue, the federal Farm Bill. So this is a massive piece of legislation that really the single most important piece of legislation that affects the food that you eat, the crops that we grow, our natural resources, food security, and hunger in America. And it really is a massive piece of legislation. $100 billion every year. It's $1 trillion over the next 10 years. And it is up for debate right this year in Washington.
I was just curious, this is the same bill that provides subsidies for corn growers?
Yes, it is that same bill, yeah, okay. Yes. So I'm going to talk about where all the money goes, and it's basically, here's actually a slide of where the money goes. Yay! So it may surprise you to learn that actually 80% of the Farm Bill is going to providing a safety net for hungry people in this country through the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, SNAP. And I am actually not going to talk that much about that part of the bill. What I really want to focus on is the food production side of the Farm Bill, which is the crop insurance subsidies, commodity subsidies, the conservation programs. And then you see that little slice called Other, which is kind of 0%. It's more like 0.3%. That's kind of the healthy food part of the Farm Bill. And because the Farm Bill is such a huge bill, it's updated every 5 to 7 years. Last year was supposed to be the 2012 Farm Bill. It was supposed to pass out of Congress. It was passed by the full Senate, it passed by the House Ag Committee, and it was never brought to the full House for a vote. And so right now we're operating under a Farm Bill extension, which very unfortunately extended all of the subsidies for the large agribusinesses, but it cut all the most vital programs to support local agriculture, small-scale farmers, beginning farmers, disadvantaged farmers, and a lot of the conservation programs. So right now we're operating under this Farm Bill extension, which has really taken a lot of money out of the local farm economy, unfortunately. So last year we almost got to the finish line with a Farm Bill that was also a very bad bill. And so I want to kind of take you back to that bill so that we can understand kind of where we're coming from, because the House and the Senate will begin hearings on the Farm Bill probably in the next couple of months, and they're going to use that base bill as kind of their starting point. And so I want to help you guys understand, what was in that bill. And it was touted as a reform bill. I don't know if you remember, in December there was a lot of people were pushing to get this bill passed. I think the Granger was really pushing hard to get this bill passed, and folks were calling it a reform bill. And really, they were calling it a reform bill because it eliminated the direct payment program. That's the direct subsidy program that has channeled over the last 15 years, $250 billion, nearly $250 billion into subsidies, the vast majority of benefits which are flowing to a very small percentage of highly profitable and often environmentally destructive farm businesses. So we have the top 10% of farms collecting 74% of the subsidies, and that program was eliminated. So that was great. Here at the Environmental Working Group, we've been working for over a decade to try to reform this program, and we finally broke through, and we were very excited about that. And if for unfortunately, so the end of the payments in 2012 was a great thing. Unfortunately, the bad news was that rather than directing the savings of the direct payment program into, good local food programs or conservation programs, or even deficit reduction, they plowed most of it into another kind of subsidy program called the crop insurance program. And so really it continued to basically support the crop insurance program benefits the largest, most profitable farms in the country at a time when farm revenue is at an all-time high, and it's a highly concentrated program. I'm going to talk a little bit more about it in a minute. It's really important to understand this crop insurance program because it's the second largest program in the Farm Bill, and it's kind of where a lot of our taxpayer money is going, and we'd like to see it shifted somewhere else. Also important to know that the Farm Bill that was voted on by the House Agriculture Committee did a lot of other really bad things. It cut $16 billion out of the nutrition programs. That's the SNAP program. It cut $6 billion out of the conservation programs, which I'll talk about in a minute, which I know is of great interest to you all, being Green Grangers. And it also cut really important programs for beginning farmers and other things. It also included what we call a rider, we were talking about this earlier, that would have essentially preempted all of the, basically taken federal policy, federal laws would have basically exempt GMO plantings from federal law. So it was a very bad rider that would have taken our ability to regulate GMO crops away. So we opposed that bill, and while so we were happy that the bill didn't go through in the end, but we were very disappointed that what did go through was this Farm Bill extension, which is leaving a lot of the funding off of the table for local food. So I guess I want to take a quick look at kind of the spending priorities in the bill, and then go into some more details about crop insurance, conservation, and local food, which I know is of great interest to you all. So, okay, I know this will work. Okay, so on the one hand, we are told that we should fill half of our plates with fruits and vegetables, healthy fruits and vegetables, but when you look at the federal Farm Bill, you can see that we spend way more money. We spend almost the entire pie of money on the commodity crops, and that is basically, only a tiny fraction is going to the production and promotion of the healthy foods, which is really much to the detriment of California, Oregon, Washington, where we grow the healthy foods. And so at EWG, most of the funding is actually going to support the production of commodity crops that are providing raw materials for junk food, animal feed, and ethanol, basically. And so at EWG, one of the things we do is we follow the money. That's what I spend a lot of time.
So what are the commodities mainly? Corn, soybeans, what else?
Oh, right. So corn, soybeans, rice, cotton, and wheat are the 5 principal commodities that receive the subsidies. There's other commodities as well, but mostly those 5. And yeah, so you can see there we're spending 8 times more over the course of 3 years on those commodity crops than we are on healthy fruits and vegetables. And so this has big implications for our health. We're told, we know that we need to eat more fruits and vegetables, and the fact that we are not investing in these healthy fruits and vegetables takes a toll on our health. If we invested more of the Farm Bill funds in healthy fruits and vegetables, we could reduce the risk of many diet-related diseases, we'd save lots of money, and we would be able to support more of our diversified fruit and vegetable growers. And so that is, there's no doubt that we could save not only billions of dollars, but billions of lives. So last year, a study came out that showed that if we just ate that 20,000 cancer cases could be prevented if half of Americans increased their consumption of fruits and vegetables by a single serving. I mean, it's tremendous. The amount of money that we could save as a nation if we just invested more in fruits and vegetables is really mind-blowing, and yet we're not doing that. So I feel like Oregon actually has an important role to play in that because you are a producer of fruits and vegetables, as is California. So let me just talk a little bit about crop insurance, which I know is probably not a riveting subject that you all really want to spend your Friday night talking about, but it's a really important topic if we talking about the federal farm bill, because it's the second largest program in the farm bill. It's the biggest chunk after food stamps. It's grown from $2 billion in 2000 to $9 billion in 2012, sorry. So we expect that right now crop insurance will cost us, the taxpayers, $90 billion over the next 10 years. And it's really the most important subsidy right now for farms. And it's the way that it's designed right now, the benefits are highly concentrated among the very profitable farms. It has a tremendously negative impact on the environment, and it's diverting scarce resources that could be going into other kinds of farming and programs that really would support our healthy food system and local food economy. So I'll quickly explain to you how it works. You may be surprised to learn that farmers, or that corn and soy have better insurance than many of you. Basically, it's all covered. Farmers get about 62% on average of their premium subsidy paid for. So it's kind of like health insurance, where your employer will pay 60%, the government pays 60% of the premium. So the farmer's putting in about 38%. And over 80% of crop insurance actually covers farm income, not weather losses. So it's really a guarantee kind of program for income. And the crop insurance program is not benefiting the healthy fruits and vegetables. As I was talking about before, 93% of the crop insurance program is going into the commodity crops. Only 7% into fruits, nuts, and vegetables. And even there, most small-scale diversified farms who are growing the food that we consume don't get any insurance. So this is the second largest farm bill program, and many growers actually don't benefit from that. So Oregon's share of crop insurance is about 0.3% over the last 10-15 years, and even though Oregon is about 1.2% of the farm economy. So there's no doubt that farmers need a good safety net. They absolutely do, and at AWG we strongly support a good crop insurance program for farmers, and we put forth all kinds of proposals that would protect farms, particularly when the weather's bad. But the way the crop insurance program is designed, it's extremely broad. It's, number one, the benefits are highly concentrated. So you have the top 20% of farmers getting 80% of all the premium subsidies. We did some research and we found that 26 policyholders are getting more than $1 million in subsidies. That's just premium subsidies. Every year they get paid. So I did some research in California. You have one farmer, he grows 40,000 acres of cotton. He gets $1 million a year to protect that cotton. There's 10,000 that are getting over $100,000, and of those, only 51 are Oregonians. I just did a little bit of research on that. If you look at, in terms of the U.S. and how skewed it is, you have the top 5%, and that's 24,000 farm operations are getting 115,000. And then you have, most of the farmers, that the remaining 80% getting $5,000 a year.
When you say the top 20% of farmers, is that predominantly big corporations as opposed to real people farmers?
Well, that's a good. It's actually 20% of or 5% of the premium the policy holders. So a lot of farmers are excluded from that process to begin with, so they're not in that percentage. So it's going to there's some of them are corporate farms, some of them are very large family farms, 20,000 acres, 15,000 acres. They're not all corporations, they're farm operations, but they're definitely very large. And many of these operations are extremely profitable. Farm income is really at an all-time high. In the last 3-4 years, they've had the best years. The rural economies in many places, especially in the Midwest, is booming. The more farm economies where we have more diversified, smaller scale farmers, they're struggling more, right?
Yeah.
There's a tremendous kind of bifurcation of the ag system there. So that's what those.
And then is some of that insurance going to pay farmers not to plant, which is a holdover from the Depression?
So yeah, so the direct payment program that I was talking about before, which was it was proposed to be eliminated, which it didn't because we're operating under a Farm Bill extension. That program actually over the last 8 years paid out $11 billion to farmers who didn't farm. Yes. We did the research to look at the numbers, and it pays out a lot of. It's based on historic acreage. So if once upon a time you farmed that land, and there's all kinds of examples of like Texas, where if you own a house on a former farm, you get the subsidies. Like they worked it out. So we're very glad that that's gone. But unfortunately, this this system of the crop insurance system is just replacing that. So here in Oregon, I just thought it would be interesting to look to see kind of what does it look like in Oregon. Well, the top 5% of policyholders in Oregon, that's just 129 farms, not a lot. Their average is 68,000, and most of them are getting 2,700. So another major problem with the crop insurance program is that unlike direct payments, there's no limits on crop insurance. So a private equity firm can go and buy up the whole state of Kansas, essentially, and plant corn, and they'll get 60% of the premium subsidy covered. So we could spend upwards of $1, $2, $3 million per policyholder. There's no limit. And there's no transparency, so there's no way to know who's getting the money. So if, Jeannie was talking about our databases. So we have a database online of farm subsidies. You can go into our database and find out who got the money for the direct payments. And having that information allows you to go and talk to policymakers about who's getting the money, and it's really important that we know where taxpayer money is going. So this program, no transparency, and they've been fighting. We've been fighting for transparency. They've been fighting.
I have a question. This is subsidy to the premium being paid by the farmer to somebody else, right? Or what? How does that work?
Right.
The farmer goes out and buys insurance from the insurance company, right?
Right.
Supposedly, and then he's getting 68% of that particular premium paid for by somebody else, the government, right? Wherever it is.
Right.
And
So
he's paying 28% of that particular premium. So the money actually not going to the farmer, it's actually going to the insurance company, right?
Right.
And then when they do have a bad year, wherever it is, then the insurance company pays out the farmer whatever the insurance is for, right? Something like that. Is that what I'm saying? Or?
yes, up until the last thing that you
So
said.
it depends on the value of the farms, how much the premium is going to be and how much the subsidy will be.
Right. So basically, yeah, you're right. So the premiums that the taxpayers are paying are going directly into the crop insurance company's pockets,
Right.
and then the farmer pays some portion of that.
Right.
And so what we have in our country is a guaranteed profit scheme for crop insurance companies. So they're making out like bandits. So we're putting $1.4 billion a year into just the profit of 15 private companies. And their average return is 14%. In 2010, they got a 25% return on their investment. So And
The
that
insurance company.
the insurance companies, and the insurance industry is incredibly concentrated. So you have 3 insurance companies that dominate 50% of the market, including Wells Fargo is one of them, and several of them are overseas companies, so they're not even U.S. companies. So this is definitely something. So an example would be like a farmer receives $2.2 million, and then the insurance company gets $816,000 to administer it. So it's quite a scam for insurance companies.
But it's not about weather? It's not about weather, so they're guaranteeing
They're guaranteeing an income. So if you're making, say $5 million a year, and you have 3 years of consecutive 5, that's your average, and if the price goes down, then you're covered after 80%.
So that has to do with world economics and nothing to do with
Right,
weather.
nothing to do with weather. But it could have to do with weather, but but here's the thing, you had said before, so when disaster strikes, the crop insurance companies have to pay that money, right? Well, no, actually we're on the hook for a lot of that money. So what happened this past year with the terrible drought, we were in the situation where basically the crop insurance companies paid some out, but then we, on top of that, when it gets to a certain point, the taxpayers pick up the tab. So we actually paid out $14 billion.
That's where the law is written, right? Or something. Somebody had to okay that.
Yeah, it's just the way it's written, and not only that.
The way the law is written, or the way that the Congress at the time decided to add it to the.
Right.
Well, which way is it? Which way is it? Is it the law that says we're going to pay out more, or is it that the Congress at the time decides to vote to pay out more?
No, it's the way that the crop insurance rules and regulations are written, where it's written into the rules the way it is. It's not like they have to vote on it after the fact. This is the way the system is set up, and it's even worse than that, which is that when there's a calamity like with the drought, the price of corn went up. So it was at like $4.50 a bushel, and after the drought, it went up to $7.50 a bushel. Well, we paid out to farmers on the $7.50 a bushel price, not on the $4.50, which is what they would have gotten if there hadn't been a drought. And so in many cases, farms actually did better off than they would have if there hadn't been a drought. It's not a protection. It's not a safety net. It's a guaranteed revenue program.
We as an insurance company, but the insurance company pays out part of that, and the government pays out
the rest of it.
So it's not we paying out all of it.
No. But ultimately, it all comes back to us. I mean, a lot of it comes back to us. There's very little risk from the crop insurance. The crop insurance companies are not. They don't have risk in this process.
So is it really a form of reinsurance where the crop insurance company shifts the risk over to the taxpayer
Yes.
to a certain,
Yes.
to a large extent?
Exactly.
And so that they're really acting as an insurance company sort of pro forma, but they're not really taking the risk.
They're not taking the full risk. Right.
Yeah,
That's
right.
exactly right. It comes back to us. So I'm amazed. You guys really do want to talk about crop insurance. And the reason it's so important to understand this is because this is not where our money needs to be going. It needs to be going to other programs. So we're going to get to those in a second. I just want to talk about the environmental damages. So basically, there's a lot of serious environmental impacts from this crop insurance program. Number one, there's no requirement for farmers receiving insurance payments to meet even basic conservation standards. In Farm Bill speak, we call this conservation compliance, which is something that is attached to the direct payments. So when you're farming highly erodible land, you have to abide by minimum conservation requirements. With crop insurance, there are none. And not only that, basically the subsidies are reducing the risk and driving farms to plant every inch of available land, whether it should be farmed or not. And so EWG did a study looking at the conversion of land in the Midwest and found that farmers have plowed under 23 million acres of sensitive prairie land. These are native grasses, wetlands, and that some say it's the most threatened ecosystem on Earth. in just 5 years, 23 million acres, and our insurance, our crop insurance, subsidies are covering those farms. They don't say, well, you can't. It covers any kind of land. So that's a really bad policy. So there's a lot of reforms that are needed with crop insurance, and we're working really hard right now in Washington to get these proposals inserted in the Farm Bill, and they will save a lot of money that we can put into much better purposes like conservation. So we could put $40,000 a year payment limits, for example, on the crop insurance, and not give profitable farms $1 million a year for crop insurance. We could reduce the premium subsidies from 62% to 30%, and that would get us about $4 billion annually. That's a lot of money. We could scale back the crop insurance company profits. That would get us about $1 billion. We could do means testing, which means that if you're a very profitable, very wealthy farm, you wouldn't get your subsidy. And so that could save us $100 million at least annually. And then, of course, we need transparency so we know where the money goes, and we need conservation compliance to reduce the environmental damage. So these are some of the proposals that we have on the table. I think we hope that your representatives in Oregon will support these. And they're very important because at a time when people say, well, there's no money, right? I mean, that's what you always hear when we talk about our priorities. They say there's no money. And this is why it's really important for people who wouldn't normally think about crop insurance or care about crop insurance. It's important for you to be able to say, well, actually, there is money here. There's a lot of money. All these reforms add up to over $6 billion a year. It's a lot of money. And so at a time when they are increasing the funding for crop insurance, and at a time when agriculture is putting unprecedented pressure on our natural resources, this Farm Bill is actually proposing to cut the conservation programs by $6 billion over the next five years. So this really makes no sense at all, because it's the conservation programs that can help the farmers implement the really good management practices on their land, so that when we have extreme weather events like droughts and floods, they can be more resilient. I mean, these are the programs that we need to be doubling, tripling, and in fact, all of the subsidy programs should have a requirement that farmers are implementing these minimum environmental standards.
But what about the political climate? I mean, these are all good ideas, but it's politics that drives so much of what happens or doesn't happen.
It is, but I think whether you are a Republican or a Democrat, you don't want to see taxpayer money wasted. And we know that a lot of the money that is going into the crop insurance program, for example, is wasted because it goes to farm enterprises that don't need it, or it goes to crop insurance companies that don't need it. And there is a bipartisan effort in the House and the Senate to reform the crop insurance program. The problem is that the House Agriculture Committee, which is made up of Democrats and Republicans, they mostly represent the large farming interests, both Democrats and Republicans. And so we have to form alliances with representatives that are outside of those ag committees to put pressure and to say no farm bill unless you make serious reform. So that's what we're trying to make happen. And the conservation programs, I mean, I think with climate change, with all of the incredible pressures and the impacts that farmers are feeling every day from the weather, their strongest line of defense is not crop insurance. Their strongest line of defense is to manage their land in ways which will protect their crops. And so these kinds of programs, the conservation programs, help farmers manage their resources more sustainably, their soil. It pays for programs like the Environmental Quality Incentive Program. Actually, it may surprise you to learn, this is kind of an incredible, that the conservation section, the conservation title of the Farm Bill, represents the single largest expenditure of tax dollars in the federal government to protect water and soil, to sequester carbon, and to preserve wildlife habitat. So the Farm Bill is actually, it is a really important piece of conservation legislation. A lot of people don't know that, and it's certainly at risk of being cut, but it is really important. I'll just give you an example. The Environmental Quality Incentives Program, which is about $1 billion a year, it basically pays cost share for farmers to implement things like cover cropping or integrated pest management to reduce pesticides, or buffer grasses to prevent the erosion into the waterways and to keep the fertilizer on the land. It does all kinds of really great things to help farmers. It also there's also a very a new program that was created under the Environmental Quality Incentives Program. One of the really great wins from the 2008 Farm Bill was the establishment of the Organic Initiative within the Environmental Quality Incentives Program, EQIP. And that initiative essentially helps farmers to do things like cover crops and crop rotations, reducing, helping farmers transition from conventional to organic. So it both supports existing organic farms that want to improve their land, and it also helps conventional farmers transition. So if you all know farmers that are looking for help from the government to make the transition, this program there's actually money in this program. It was not eliminated in the sequester, either in the sequester or in the extension, so it's a great program. And as you know, organic agriculture has great benefits for all of us in terms of reducing chemicals in our air, water, reducing exposure for workers and farmers and consumers, more biodiversity, increased habitat for wildlife. There's a lot of benefits to organic agriculture. So this is really one of the bright spots in the Farm Bill. We got about $50 million a year to do this. It hasn't been fully implemented, but I definitely would encourage you to share the information. So, as I mentioned before, the Farm Bills, both the House and the Senate Farm Bills were proposing to cut these conservation programs by about $700 million a year, which is really a bad thing, especially when you have the situation where, for example, in 2009, you had 110,000 applications and only 31,000 were funded. So 2 out of 3 farmers are turned away from these programs. So they're very popular, and we need more.
What's the reason why people are turned away?
It's money. They just don't have the money in the program. So all the money is being diverted right now to other purposes like the crop insurance program.
I see. And what about, some people claim that the concept of organic farming has been hijacked by corporations who have in various ways influenced the Department of Agriculture to let them do things that are questionable, and what we should really be working towards is local farming, as opposed to any mega farming that occurs far away.
Well, I think local is great, but organic, there actually is only one standard for certified organic that you can trust, and it is actually the USDA certified organic label, and it does mean something. I mean, there's definitely been efforts and attempts to hijack it, but so far, I think the label is pretty solid. It's the best thing we have. It allows consumers everywhere to look for food that's been produced without chemicals, without synthetic fertilizer.
Well, they do allow there are certain allowable chemicals in the National Organic Program that are chemicals that are used by conventional farming. So it's good, but there is definitely allowable. I just read the whole thing recently.
Well, I mean, it could be better, but it's the best thing we've got. Yeah. And it's
better to support that than the other.
Yeah, I mean, local is great, but you can have local with lots of pesticides and chemical fertilizers, and you wouldn't know it. If it's local, not all local is necessarily clean agriculture. So.
What type of application, like for instance, if a farmer team, what's an example of a conservation application that a farmer would submit?
A conservation application?
Yeah, what type of these applications, what's the typical application?
Project.
What's it asking for?
Like in terms of the amount or the kinds of things?
Well, not the amount, just what is,
So basically, there's an application that the farmer fills out that they ask you to do a conservation plan. So that's the first thing you do is you...
what's that there, what they're doing, are they not taking the land out of
What's the
production, what
project
are they
look
doing?
like? What is it?
So they might be doing cover cropping, they might be doing hedgerows, they might be doing a nutrient management plan for fertilizer, how to reduce their fertilizer applications. They have a whole set, there's actually like 300 different practices or more, maybe 500 practices that they can apply for funding to do.
I would think they would do that naturally, just to make a better product, I would think. Wouldn't they?
I think sometimes it costs money. I mean,
No, but I think they would do it.
Well, to put land out of production and to put half your land in cover cropping, it costs, you're not having a crop on that half of your land. So that subsidy to actually do.
right, so there's another program called the Conservation Reserve Program, and that's about taking land that is highly erodible out of production. And that they pay you a certain amount per acre for that. But that's different than the working lands conservation, where you're actually implementing these different practices and getting support for that.
So it could be a new practice for your farm that you want to implement, and you need equipment, or you need materials, or you need training to do it, and that would help pay for that?
Yeah, so it pays for technical assistance, and it pays for, like, if you're going to plant hedgerows, you got to put the hedgerows in, or if you're going to plant grasses as a buffer between your field and the waterways, that's going to cost money to do that. And farmers don't naturally do that. I mean, a lot of farms right now in the Midwest, what we're seeing is they're planting their farms fence row to fence row, right? There's no buffer zones between the farmland and the rivers, which is causing tremendous pollution in the rivers. So these programs help farmers do kind of defray the cost of doing that.
So then, I guess if you're a farmer with wanting to be conservation and you would normally do things like that. I think that's the concept here. Why do you have to be paid? Why do you have to ask for money for you to implement these things when it should be a natural practice as a farmer?
Right. We wish it was. I mean, it's clearly not. There's a lot of farms, like I was just saying, that are not practicing good conservation. And
why should I pay my neighbor farmer to
do
what
that?
Really is just the right thing to do?
Well, that's a really good question. And sometimes, the answer is that we need to regulate farms so that they don't pollute. I don't know, it may surprise you to learn that agriculture is the single largest water polluter in the country. So as an industrial, you would think other industrial sectors would have a bigger impact on our water, but agriculture is actually the #1 impact. So these conservation programs are a way to incentivize farms, and they have to put their own money into it as well. So we're paying 50%, and the farmer's paying 50%. In California, we've been providing this carrot, that's what we call it, kind of a carrot, to get farms to do better conservation on their land. And some of them, when they don't do that, the next step is regulation, right? And that's what we've had to do to prevent the nitrogen, especially nitrogen and pesticide contamination in the water, which is the big problem we have.
So we pay them to be better stewards of the land.
Yeah, essentially. And it's also rewarding the good farmers. So there's another program called the Conservation Stewardship Initiative, which actually pays farmers to both, it rewards the farmers that are doing the right thing, and it encourages them to do more. So it's for the benefits of all of us, because we're conserving water. Like some of these programs are water, they're energy efficient. They're programs to reduce, to increase water use efficiency, water conservation, cleaner air, programs that would help reduce the pollution, air pollution, getting pesticides out of our water, fertilizer out of our water. These are things that benefit everybody. I mean, I agree with you that it would be great if farmers were to do these things, but they're clearly not. So.
I've heard complaints in the past that a lot of, that the majority of this conservation dollars ended up going to incentivize, as you said, the very worst polluters of agriculture. So it wasn't going to the small good guys that, you know, or already know that it's good practice to put hedgerows in and good practice to have buffer zones. The money wasn't going to them as much as it was going to, and I don't know of these facts, but that it was going to the big capos that were saying, but we can't afford to protect the rivers from our runoff. That would require tons of infrastructure that we simply couldn't pay for, and that the conservation dollars went there.
Right.
Is that true?
Thank you. You're like a plant in the audience.
Oh.
So basically, it's true that a lot of the conservation dollars over the years have been spent in ways that are not either paying farms, large profitable farms who should be paying to clean up their own pollution, right? The large CAPOs, the concentrated animal feedlots, which are basically 60% in the EQIP program, 60% of the money is going to livestock farming. 40% goes to crops, and of course most of those goes to the commodity crops, not to the fruit and vegetable growers. But it's true that over the years the conservation dollars have not been spent that well, and so EWG, along with the National Sustainable Agriculture Coalition and Defenders of Wildlife and a number of other national environmental groups, have come together to develop a reform conservation bill that will basically make conservation more effective and strengthen, you know, the programs that we have, and hopefully get, you know, secure the funding so that we can maintain the funding for the programs. So let's see, where are we here? So I've talked a lot about kind of what's wrong with the Farm Bill, and there is a lot that's wrong. Although the conservation programs are, you know, they're a mixed bag. I think they're really important, and they also could be improved. So, but one of the big bright spots in this past Farm Bill that didn't actually make it, the 2012 Farm Bill, was the fact that there was more support for local and regional agriculture than ever before. And it was very small, but important. And the reason is because the market is just exploding, and Congress is finally seeing that, well, this is actually, you know, a real sector that's worth investing in. There's across the country over 7,000 farmers markets, 6,000 community-supported agriculture programs, probably many more than that. We don't have really good data. More than 2,000 farm-to-school programs that are connecting farms with schools, 300, probably many more universities that are sourcing local sustainable food, 360 hospitals that are sourcing nutritious, locally grown food, and that number has grown a lot. I can't keep up with it because literally every day there's new programs. There's so much energy out there in this country to build local food economies. It is incredible. It is the bright spot in agriculture, and it's just so exciting because it's bringing, you know, all kinds of people who have concerns about health, about the environment, about economics, the farmers. It's bringing everybody together. Locally sourced food is the top restaurant trend 4 years in a row. And more large grocery stores are carrying local food. So, I mean, Lucky's has, you know, everybody's touting local food. It's a big selling point. So, in response to this, and in response to a lot of folks organizing, and organizations like EWG and National Sustainable Agriculture Coalition, we worked together with a wonderful farmer, organic farmer from Maine. I'm going to skip this for a minute. Shelley Pingree is her name, and she introduced last year a bill called the Local Farms Food and Jobs Act. And this bill would supports local organic and beginning farmers, and it increases access to healthy food. It supports all kinds of programs that are helping to increase marketing, processing, and distribution of local food. helping to get EBT markets, EBT machines at farmers markets, and that's the electronic benefit transfer. It's the food stamp card, so that low-income folks can have access to the healthy food there. It enables schools to use more of their federal money for local food. Importantly, it provides credit and crop insurance for diversified and organic farmers. So, I was saying before how so many of the diversified farms weren't getting access to the crop insurance program, so this would help with that. And overall, it just increased funding for many of the programs that are supporting healthy food access in local and regional food markets, and the farmers, right, that are delivering the food. So this bill was introduced in November 2011, and it's going to be introduced again in April, and we are working really hard on this bill. It's a small amount of money. It's like $100 million a year for local and regional food systems. The idea of this bill is that we call it a marker bill, because it's essentially a bill that is designed to organize people like yourselves and others out in the country that really care about local food, to get their members of Congress to basically sign on to this legislation as co-sponsors. So the more co-sponsors you build on this legislation, the more likely you are to get the House Agriculture Committee and the Senate Ag Committee to actually embrace the provisions that are in this bill. And so this is a very important bill for everybody who wants our government to invest more in local food. And it's particularly important now because, I had said before that we lost a lot of the funding for these programs in the Farm Bill extension. So right now we don't have funding for a lot of these programs. It's zero funding for next year. So this is something that I would really encourage you all to talk to your legislators about and to support. So you'll be hearing more about this. Okay, so here's just a list so that you could see some of the programs that are funded through this bill and other bills as well. And I just wanted to highlight a couple things that are important for you all to know about. If you work with organizations that are involved with local food, or you have friends, colleagues, the Specialty Crop Block Grant Program is a program that is delivered through the Oregon Department of Agriculture, and it has there's funding available to do community food projects and to support local food infrastructure and various things like that. So that's an important program to kind of keep an eye on, and there actually is funding for that program. That one didn't get cut. And also the Community Food Projects Grant Program. That's also another really good program that can help communities that want to develop their local food infrastructure and increase access, especially increasing access to healthy food in underserved communities. So those are just a couple of examples. And just to give you a sense of how the funding is allocated here. On average, in a given year, our government, we spend about $100 million on these programs, compared to about $13 billion for the commodity crop. So it just gives you a sense of kind of how much we have, how far we have to go to really get more funding for these programs.
How does your organization fit into the scheme of things, and how does it get funding?
Can you go back one? Yeah, here we go. So Environmental Working Group, we get our funding through grants. So we're a nonprofit research advocacy organization. So we get about 50% of our budget. Our budget is about $6 million a year. We get half of it through grant foundation funding, and then maybe the other half through individual donors. So we have 1.3 million supporters.
You're a 501c3.
We're a 501c3. We also have a 501c4, but we definitely are, yeah. So we have a lot of supporters online that fund us. We're always looking. It's it's a tough environment right now, so we're always looking to diversify our funding, but. We don't take any money from the government because we are watchdogs. That's what, we hold the government accountable, so we can't take any of their money. we won't be able to do that. So I just want to wrap up. I know you guys have been great to be so attentive on this late Friday night. Talking about the exciting issue of crop insurance reform. So just to wrap, basically, we're really working on 3 primary areas right now at EWG, and we see these as real possibilities for the Farm Bill, for Farm Bill reform. The crop insurance reform, which I mentioned would save us billions of dollars a year, which we could then put into conservation policy reform and full funding for conservation. And then the policy reforms and more funding for local, organic, and healthy food, which is through that local food bill. So I just want to encourage all of you. I know you have a lot of fights here locally. We were talking earlier about some of your local legislation, and I just think it's really important if we don't get involved, if you all don't get involved to educate your friends and advocate with your members of Congress. Phone calls are really important. We will not, the big agribusiness interests will win every time because they have hundreds and hundreds of lobbyists in Washington with, millions of dollars, and we have the people on our side, and we can make a difference. I know, legislators really listen to people, particularly phone calls, make a big difference. So, the Farm Bill will be probably heating up in May and June, and so I just encourage you to keep an eye out on it. Please pass around a form, and if you want to sign up, you can keep in touch with us, and we'll send you action alerts when you can take action. And I just really want to encourage you. So can I ask, do you think after hearing this, do you feel like you have enough information? Would you be willing to pick up the phone and make a call and say, we really want you to support local food, not crop insurance? Is that something that you all would be willing to do?
Yeah, what was the name of that, the Local Food Act?
Local Farms Food and Jobs Act. Yeah, that's going to be a big push, and to get both of your senators on board with that, and to get the Granger actually supporting that as a resolution to say that you want you want the lobbyists in Washington to be actively supporting that bill. That would be really helpful.
Yeah, you know what I think when I think about $100 million spread across the country for that act, I think what an incredibly good investment that is, because you get so much more employment through the small farm sectors than you do through those mega farms. And then of course you don't have all the cleanup to deal with. You don't hit the taxpayers from other angles the way you do with the big monoculture crops where, we have to pay all this money to keep them getting the same amount of money every year, and that feeds the insurance companies. I don't know why we have to feed the private insurance companies. And then the taxpayers have to come in and clean up after the mess. And then we have to deal with all the health issues that are, it's extremely expensive. You pay for it over and over and over and over. And then meanwhile, you get farmers like Shane back here, willing to work so much. And I think most small farmers that I know are shocked to think that there are farmers getting all this money from the government. I really think that almost every farmer I know, their jaw is wrong. To think they're proud of their independence, they're proud of making it, and when they need help, they don't dream of the government helping them. That's the last place they think to go to. It's a whole different mindset, the small farmers.
It's true.
They're not on the dole like the big guys are.
It's true. It's true.
You said something about steering the lobbyists. But it seems to me that the lobbyists are really working for the people who have the big bucks and will pay them. How many lobbyists are willing to listen to a nonprofit which is maybe singing the right song but isn't going to pay them what they expect to get?
The lobbyists in Washington?
Yeah, you talked about lobbyists are typically people, agents of moneyed interests.
Right, they are. So they don't. They have a job to do, which is, their job is to represent, the farm lobby, essentially the crop insurance companies, the large corporate multinationals. I mean, they're in Washington doing that. We don't, I mean, we have our own lobbyists that work for the environmental issues and for the local farm issues. What's really interesting with local farms, like what you were saying about the small farmers, you know, it's not very often that you hear small farmers speaking out very loudly against these subsidy programs. It's one of the challenges that we have in Washington, that you don't have a lot of farmers speaking out against this very system, which is so detrimental to small farms, because when you're putting all this money into large farm enterprises and all the money is going into these bigger profitable enterprises, well, they're getting bigger and they're driving the small farmers out. And so it's really against their interests, and it's obviously making it harder for them to compete anyway, because they're just not getting those big payouts. But very little is said from the small farmers. Don't have a lot of representation, number one, and they're busy farming. And you know, a lot of the small farms that are growing the food that we eat, they're just not I mean, they just don't even get any money from this program, and so they don't really consider it to be something that they.
And mostly they don't wish for it, but I've heard 2 farmers recently talk about needs that they had, and I wonder where they fit in on this. One of them has a hazelnut farm, and he is organic. Is that Frank? No. No. The guy who we heard at Hummingbird talk about his farm.
I wasn't doing
Anyway, there's the Eastern hazelnut, is it Eastern hazelnut blight? That is an issue for all the farmers here. It's a blight that is, I think, only, anyone please correct me where I'm wrong, it's only treated with some pretty intense fungicides. And so people who, actually it's not even treatable. So what they wanted to do was to get a lot of research going into the universities, money going into the universities to help farmers deal with this blight. But they couldn't get money for it. And another one was the mummyberry, blueberry issue. Some of farmers we know really have suffered this year with mummyberry. This was one where they were looking for organic methods of controlling it that were safe to use, and they're working on it. They're working hard, but again, there's no money in the university to fund studies for it. The universities would be the ones, you know, OSU would be the ones to do a program on that, but they couldn't get the funding for it. And it covers a lot of farmers around here. Mummyberry is a terrible fungus, you know, and you've seen all these blueberry bushes covered with these shriveled little white, hard berries, and it's really sad to see. One nice guy we know who donated tons of blueberries to our pancake breakfast here, he lost more than half his crop a couple of years ago just to this stuff. And he's been working so hard trying to find ways to treat it, and they tell him at OSU they don't have the funding to help.
Well, hopefully they're putting in applications. There are a lot. One of the things I didn't talk about in the Farm Bill that's really important is the research funding. There is significant research funding. It's like $1 billion a year. There's a lot of research funding available.
The universities?
The universities, yeah. And some of it, you know, a portion of it is going into what they call specialty crops, fruits, nuts, and vegetable research, and so there is some funding there, so hopefully they would apply. But I think it's really important to get the senators from your state to educate them about the Farm Bill, and then get them engaged with the Agriculture Committee to say, we want a Farm Bill that works for states like Oregon and California and Washington that grow healthy food for people. We need a Farm Bill that supports our local food economies. Like, if you can get the senators, I think, and your representatives talking about that. I mean, Blumenauer and DeFazio, your 2 representatives, those 2 representatives are amazing on the Farm Bill. They both are incredibly progressive, and they're outspoken, and they're really supportive. And so there's not much more you can do for them other than encourage them to continue doing what they're doing, because it's really important for them to hear from you that, you know, it's really that you agree with what they're doing and that you think it's important. But I don't know if there's any other questions. I know it's getting late, so. Happy to look forward to spending some time with you all tomorrow to work on resolutions. Maybe you can do something on the Farm Bill.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. I have this magazine out there, and in the middle is a great little article that I wrote about the Farm Bill, and it summarizes a lot of what I talked about more originally. So.
Wow, that was great. That was the big picture, and of course we'll bring our minds back to Oregon and California and our own issues that we're so involved with here, and then even back down to our communities and back down to our neighborhoods and back down to our granges and families and back to the steps that we can take. Of course, we can take steps at all levels, right? From the national, like Kari does, and then the state level ones going up to Salem, and then most fun of all, of course, are the actions we can take in our own personal daily lives with our families at the Grange.